All right, so today we're going to talk about essay type 3C. This is discuss the advantages and disadvantages and give your opinion. So unlike the other ones that we looked at, this one requires that you do three things. You have to talk about the advantages, you have to talk about the disadvantages, and you have to give your opinion. Okay, so this is a template that should help you in this respect. And let's just look at the structure first before we take a look at the prompt. So the beginning doesn't change. You start with the context and you start with the thesis. But for this side too, for this type of essay too, don't try and write a balanced essay. Just choose one side. Okay. Now the easiest structure to do this properly is to start with the side you disagree with. Okay. State that some people support this reason, support this side for X reason. Okay, so on the one hand, the advantages of include, okay, give your reason, provide supporting evidence if that's relevant, provide an example, and finish off by saying based on these reasons, it's clear that there are some benefits to the first side. Remember, nothing is black and white. Even if you disagree with one side, there are obvious benefits to that side. That's why people choose that side. The second body paragraph should be about the side you agree with. So a lot of people try and do 3 body paragraphs for this essay type. It's not necessary. What you need to do is to combine the side that you agree with your opinion. Okay. So on the other hand, there are clear disadvantages to the other side, and then you need a statement like which exceed the benefits. This makes it clear that this is also your opinion. Another way to phrase it is, on the other hand, the other side is more beneficial. You don't need to say in my opinion, you don't need to say I think. If you use this kind of wording, is more beneficial or which exceeds or exceed the benefits, it's clear that that is also your position. Okay. Then you give your reason, your evidence, your example, and you finish off by saying based on these reasons, this side makes more sense or it leads to better outcomes. And for the conclusion, briefly mention the benefits of the side you disagree with, and then summarize the reasons for the side you agree with. Okay. If you follow this structure, the tree's paragraph structure, you're going to have well-developed body paragraphs, and you're not going to need a final thought. Remember, there's no marks for this. It's not on the rubric. It just helps to round off the essay if you feel that it ends abruptly. But it's very often not necessary. So I would just do this. In summary, the benefits of this is the side you don't like include, however, the drawbacks are far more substantial. This is clearly your position because, and then you very briefly summarize the reasons. Okay, of course you can flip this around. You can say in summary, the drawbacks of however, the benefits are far more substantial because, and then you say why. All right, so again, please don't write a balanced essay because then it starts, there's a very real danger of this looking like a 3A, discuss the advantages and disadvantages type essay. Okay. You don't want to write a balanced essay. You want to pick one side. It's much easier. It's much clearer. So this is our prompt for today. Many people are now working from home, but this presents a challenge for supervision. So this is very pertinent to the situation that we're in right now. As a result, many employers are forcing their employees to install software which closely monitors how they're using their computer at home. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages and give your own opinion. Give reasons for your answer. Very important. This is a requirement of the task. And include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Again, examples are mandatory. They're not optional. You're supposed to write at least 250 words. You should be aiming for closer to 300, 330 for a solid response. Okay, so what do you think? What are the advantages and disadvantages of forcing employees to install software which closely monitors how they're using their computer at home?
For the advantage, it will ensure to increase their productivity.
Yeah, that's the big obvious one. Increases productivity. How so?
By monitoring the employee, so employee what they use platform, so they like prevent them from using unnecessarily one during working hours.
So unnecessarily using what?
Platforms like other social media, Facebook or Twitter or other one.
Sorry.
So let's put it like this. Lots of employees are using, what do we call it, like social media or just surfing the net? Or
surfing the net for other purposes. Maybe, for example, chatting with, replying emails or chatting with other friends.
Applying for other jobs.
That's more frequent, yeah.
Okay.
So by introducing this, by installing this type of camera, the employee will be like, will not do these actions, so they will be more focusing on their work.
So, sir, what type of software they're actually using, like the employees are asking to install?
Okay, so as an example, it could be something like your webcam is turned on. So the quick and dirty way to do this would be you could use something like Zoom, and just as people are working, you tell them you have to keep your camera on, and it just constantly records. So the employer is not actually watching the recording all the time, but that record is there. So they might pay someone like a couple dollars to just watch the recording on fast forward and see if people look like they're paying attention. There's other apps which every few seconds they take a screenshot of your entire monitor. Okay, so the employer will then see what you spend all of your time doing. Yes, it's surveillance. It's basic surveillance technology.
It is the same as nowadays. Sometimes with this COVID situation, they introduce doing the exams at home, like IELTS indicator or other exams. I think they are installing. They're asking to open the camera, so they are monitoring.
Yeah, and when we do exams at our school, we have the students take their laptop, like turn it around the room to show that there's nobody hiding in the corner. We make sure that they show us what their desk looks like, that there's no notes on it, that everything is empty, there's nothing on the floor, there's no one else in the room, they're not holding a phone or anything. It's not very high tech, but it's effective enough.
Or maybe installing another camera at the back of the student who is giving the exam. This is also one of the way how do you do the surveillance.
But you would have to get them to install it, right? Because otherwise you'd have to go to everyone's
This is the one of the requirement, yeah. They have to have 2 cameras at least installed, one in the front and one at the back, to see to have them on 360 view of the whole room.
Oh,
this is
wow.
what happens in our exams here.
Okay, interesting. So
Sorry to ask, which exam? I mean, you try?
Oh, that's Q1. That is MCCE Q1. That is medical licensure
I
exam.
heard it's done from home. Did you
Yeah.
try it?
No, actually, it happened after that. I was done with the exam before. It happened after that.
okay, interesting. I mean, they do have 360 cameras. I've never seen a 360 webcam, but they do have 360 cameras that are pretty cheap. So that would be an interesting solution that you plug that in. They could see everything that's going on in your room all the time. Scary, right?
So what do you do if you need to go to the bathroom?
You go to the bathroom.
Oh, you don't go to the washroom in that exam. Yeah, you don't. If you go out, that means you are losing your time. You don't get breaks.
Yeah, in
wear
any exam, even IELTS, you cannot go. I mean, okay, you can go, but from your time.
Only if it is an emergency.
You wear a diaper. That's the solution.
Adult
adult
for me, I
diapers.
stop drinking water.
You can't eat
3
even
hours.
you are dying. You can't eat. You can't drink water. You can't pee.
Yeah, that's the perfect mental state to be in. Dehydrated and hungry. Right?
Yeah, it's 2 hours. It's okay.
All right. Could you come up with an example? What would be an example that would fit with this? What kind of, or if you can think of any evidence? I mean, it should be pretty.
She just talked about. This is the. It isn't an example.
Well, this is for work, right? So don't use the example that you just provided, because that's for school, that's for an examination, but this is specifically for work.
We can manipulate it towards work.
Like, for example, we can say XYZ company, their productivity was going down, but after that, when they started this maneuver, their productivity started go up like any company.
Good. And your friend is a manager at this company.
Yeah, could be.
Where productivity went down when? As soon as everyone started working from home due to COVID. So what did they do?
They installed the surveillance cameras, or they incorporated that technique of supervision with the cameras.
And what's a good verb when you put something into action? What's one word that's really appropriate for this? It starts with I.
Installed.
Well, there's nothing necessarily to install for this kind of technology. I mean, it's an app, but you don't have to install any hardware in your house. Every laptop has a webcam, and the screen capture, it's like a screen capture app. It just takes a picture of your screen every few seconds or minutes or whatever. Let's implement.
Implement.
Put something into action. We implemented this new procedure. We implemented this new policy. Implemented this technique during surgery. Implemented surveillance technology. And what happened to productivity?
Increased or improved.
Okay, and we'll say it like this: instantly recovered. Okay, as a result, productivity instantly recovered. What about the disadvantages?
One of the disadvantage can be that it can breach your privacy. Can it be?
Okay. Whoops. Breach of privacy.
What do you mean breach, John?
Breach is like break. It's a break in something. And so, like, think of it as a violation of privacy.
Okay, thank you.
For example, if you have a contract with someone and the other side doesn't do what they're supposed to in the contract, it's called a breach of contract.
Okay.
Breach of privacy means there's an expectation of privacy, and this breaks that expectation. Think of it that way.
Okay.
Right. Okay, tell me more. Breach of privacy, so what? Do you have an expectation of privacy when you are working?
To some extent, yes.
Okay. Because I know for a lot of people, a lot of companies, there is no such expectation at all. When I was a student, I worked in a lot of call centers. Everything was monitored down to the microsecond, including how much time everyone spent in the bathroom. And if you spent 1 second longer than the time they thought you were supposed to spend in the bathroom, your supervisor would give you a talking to. It was not pleasant.
It's kind of disturbing.
Yeah. So there's a fantastic word we have. It's Orwellian. Is everyone familiar with the author George Orwell? He wrote the novel 1984.
No.
No.
1984 is a very famous novel in Western culture. It was written in 1948, I believe. And this was Orwell's predictions of what he thought would turn into a dystopia. In 1984, in the novel, the government is constantly monitoring people in order to catch people who are thinking the wrong thoughts, who are opposed to the government. So people have TVs in their home that have cameras as well. So you never know when the camera's watching you and when it's not. He wrote this in 1948. That's the amazing thing. Right, and he said this would be a dystopia. A utopia is like a perfect place. A dystopia is like a horrible place. Have any of you seen the Netflix serial Handmaid's Tale? I think it's on Netflix.
No.
So, Handmaid's Tale was written by Margaret Atwood, and it's another dystopian novel in the same kind of genre. There's three. There's 1984. There's The Handmaid's Tale, and there's also Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. So all three of those were required reading when I was in school, in high school. Okay, so we call it Orwellian. Orwellian refers to Big Brother is constantly watching you. You've all seen Big Brother, right? The reality show?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we have.
So Big Brother is from George Orwell. That's what he called it. Big Brother is always watching. And that's why they call it Big Brother, because there's cameras in every room.
So this is actually a term, Orwellian, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Refers to too much or excessive government surveillance. They know too much about you. Okay. What kind of evidence or example could we talk about? Could this have any negative consequences for the company itself, for the employees, and as a result for the company?
So it can be that if a person is like is being surveillanced, like most of his working time, that can be disturbing for him, and his concentration may be lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you're,
draw out,
they will. Sorry.
like they will leave the company.
Yeah. So how would that make you feel if you were constantly on camera being watched?
Obviously uncomfortable, isn't it?
Uncomfortable, insecure.
Uncomfortable.
That's probably easier to talk about. Makes employees uncomfortable.
Like
Maybe
it loses the boundary between the working life and family life.
privacy. Okay, so that would be a separate issue. Blurs the boundary between personal life and working life. Yes. If someone's constantly watching you, what would be one word that we could use to describe that? Maybe it creates anxiety?
Anxiety, stress.
Stress. Mm-hmm. And what can those lead to? Allah mentioned employees quitting, right?
Quitting, yeah.
Yes.
Pressure.
Yeah. So we can do like a causal chain here. Pressure, quitting. So as a result, I would call this an unintended consequence, right?
Companies, they are trained workers.
Yeah. So if people are quitting, then that leads to high turnover and expense of training new staff.
Staff, yeah. It will be cost and time.
Exactly. So we've got, you can use Orwellian and Big Brother for this concept too, but it's this last one especially, that's like a separate issue, right? So I'm going to put that on a separate line. Okay, so this is lots of ideas here. I don't think we need anything else other than this. Could we come up with some kind of evidence or some kind of example? And sorry, before I forget, for this one, it's easy to come up with a statistic, right?
Yeah.
What kind of stat could you use here? If you think of an example, work backwards to come up with some kind of evidence that leads into the example. So we're saying that productivity recovered as soon as the technology was implemented. So our statistic should relate to the improved productivity that results from using this technology.
Then economist, and we can say.
Mm-hmm. You can just say it was a statistic reported in the New York Times this year. Right. According to a study reported in the New York Times this year, companies that implement this kind of surveillance technology see significant
Improvement in productivity.
yes, and we can say
Growth.
significant
Growth.
productivity gains. Productivity gains is another expression for improvement in productivity. And we'll call it worker productivity. Okay, and what about on the other side?
Can we also add the statistic on
Okay.
this one?
Okay, can you give us one?
Okay, we can say according to civilians in technology in 2020, people get more stressful at work because they're being vigilant constantly.
Okay.
Can we link it to the psychiatry that a survey conducted by a psychological institute of New York found out that it was the constant surveillance was causing significant psychological issues among the employees?
Yes, so you can do any university, any psychology department, any psychiatry department. You could even do like some organization related to human resources. Right. Both are fine. Surveillance is causing significant psychological issues among employees. Good. Is there any kind of example that we could give?
My cousin quit the job because he was having constant surveillance.
Okay, what about this example that we already have? Remember, in a lot of cases, you can look at your example in one paragraph and maybe use the same example, but a different aspect of it. So in your friend's company, where he's a manager at this company, what happened to a lot of the employees?
They're being laid off.
That doesn't follow from what we've been talking about. Okay, so some of these workers, they couldn't handle the stress and they quit. Quite a few employees quit. Let's say several employees quit. Probably wasn't quite a few because people need to work and they'll put up with a lot of crap, right? Several employees quit. And it was expensive to replace them. Good enough. We don't need more than this.
Mr. Yan, here in the first paragraph, we said that productivity will increase. So this is in terms of company. Second paragraph, if we said that, shall we stick only to the individual, the negative impact that it affects stress and the other? Because we said on the company, on the other side, they will lose worker and it will cost them. So it's okay. Like one side we said productivity, one side we said.
Okay, well, we still haven't decided on what order we're going to do these paragraphs in. Which paragraph do you think would be easier to talk about because we have to choose one side?
Disadvantages.
I think advantages.
My question, shall we talk about the company the same here, advantage and here disadvantage? So, okay.
Okay, I'll answer your question in just a sec. I'm just going to flip something around and show you something. When you're preparing for this, it doesn't matter what you really believe in your heart. I mean, I don't want to be monitored. I don't think anyone really wants to be monitored. I've been through that. When I worked at these call centers, you really feel like you're in a prison, right? They're really not nice when you do anything that you're not supposed to do, spend literally 10 seconds too long in the bathroom. It's really degrading. But nonetheless, I still worked there for several years, right? Because I had no choice, because I needed the money. Here, we've got advantages and disadvantages. We're talking about the employees, yes, but we're also talking about the company, right? So the advantage for the company is it increases productivity. I think this is like if you're a business, this is the single most important factor, right? But here, the disadvantage that we've got is the high turnover, or just the turnover, right? And the expense of training new staff if people hate your surveillance technology and quit. So in my mind, this is just the price you're going to have to pay. You're going to upset a few employees, and a couple of them will get so mad that they'll leave. But I think for the most part, the average person doesn't have that much flexibility in their life, right? Because this is not management level employees that we're talking about. It's not managers and people on the board of directors that are being observed by these cameras, right? They're not having their screens recorded. It's the low-level employees. And low-level employees, just as a general rule, don't have a lot of flexibility in life. That's why they're low-level employees, because they really need the job. And they'll just put up with it. Right? So if you're the manager at this company, if you're this kind of business, do you really care how your employees feel?
So in other words, can we say that the productivity of the company increased at the cost of the health of the employees?
I wouldn't put it that way. I would say even though there was a bit of a negative impact on employees in terms of causing a little bit of extra stress, overall, the increases in productivity outweigh the disadvantages. Because think about it this way. If you just let people do whatever they want and don't monitor them, what's going to happen? Your company's going to go broke, right?
Yeah.
So then everyone's going to be out of work. And every company just has a lot of employees that are there to do essentially grunt work. And those people are not terribly thrilled to be there. They're just there because it's a job. They need the money. Right? And if you don't monitor them, they just don't work. Any management textbook will tell you there's two kinds of employees: people who are self-motivated and people who are not. The ones that are self-motivated, that really like their job, you don't need to worry about them. They'll do the same job even if you don't pay them that much because they like the job. I think doctors fall into that category for the most part. It's a calling. They love what they do. They don't need to be monitored. But most employees, I'd say, do need some level of monitoring, or they just either don't do the job properly at all, or they simply don't work. We have this funny word called boondoggle. Has anyone heard that word?
No.
No. Okay. Don't use it on IELTS, please. Boondoggling means behaving in a way that makes it look like you're working without actually working, like looking busy.
How you spell it, John?
Looking busy doing nothing?
Yes, it's
Like
called
that, right?
it's called boondoggling.
So you say she's boondoggling?
Yeah, but nobody really uses this word. It's just funny that we have one word for it. I've seen this word maybe a handful of times in my life.
Okay.
If you want to try and use it, go for it, but I don't recommend it.
Yeah, I'm going to use it with my partner. You boondoggle all the time.
We're like, what are you talking about? It's a good
Yeah.
way to learn a new word.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we have more than enough ideas. Let's look at a model. There's an ongoing debate about whether it's a good idea to constantly monitor workers at home. While this has a number of disadvantages, there are clear benefits to this practice. Okay, let's have a look at this introductory paragraph. You ought to memorize this starter. There's an ongoing debate about whether, and just fill in the blank. It's a good idea to constantly monitor workers at home. For these templates that we use, you should absolutely memorize them. The these are provided is to make life easier for you. This is not creative writing. The more aspects of this you can kind of memorize, the more sentence starters that you can memorize, you can focus more on delivering your ideas instead of thinking about how to do so. Okay. This thesis statement could be used for any topic for this kind of essay. While this has a number of disadvantages, there are clear benefits to this practice. There's no reference to the topic even in this thesis statement. This is acceptable for your introductory thesis.
Okay.
Several disadvantages, and the bold parts are the template parts. Several disadvantages are associated with the surveillance of employees working from home. Critics point to the negative impact on employees' privacy. Notice it's not I think, it's clear that this is not my opinion. Critics point to the negative impact on employees' privacy. They will feel uncomfortable knowing that they're being watched all the time, which will lead to feeling that the employer doesn't trust them. A report released by Harvard Business School in 2017 showed that a large percentage of workers who are constantly monitored suffer from anxiety disorders due to work in a stressful, high-pressure environment where someone is constantly looking over their shoulder, even if only virtually. This can then lead to problems for a company as a result of resentment against the employer, which can cause higher employee turnover. Ironically, this can reduce productivity because turnover will cost time and money to train new staff. So, based on these factors, monitoring employees working from home can be harmful for both companies and workers. On the other hand, there are obvious benefits connected with monitoring workers at home, which outweigh the disadvantages. Okay, it's clear that this is the opinion. Proponents instead of critics. Proponents of tracking worker activity at home argue that this increases worker productivity. An article published in the New York Times this year revealed that companies using worker tracking software see significant improvements in terms of productivity and quality of work. For example, one company that had workers working from home due to the COVID-19 quarantine noticed that they were logging in late and not being very productive. After tracking technology was implemented, productivity immediately improved because employees knew they were being monitored and altered their behavior accordingly. The reason is that when people know they're being watched, they are on their best behavior. Moreover, if employees are behaving as expected and working diligently, they have nothing to fear from surveillance. When these reasons are considered, the benefits of monitoring workers exceed the disadvantages. So again, at the very end, the opinion is reinforced. Yes, this paragraph is my opinion. In conclusion, arguments on both sides of this issue have their merits. You can use this sentence in a million different topics. It's certainly true that surveillance of workers can lead to some pressure on workers, but the benefits of improved productivity exceed the disadvantages. Okay, so we do acknowledge the first side, but then we restate the thesis that the benefits exceed the disadvantages. Okay, any questions, any comments about this model?
So you started with the disadvantage first,
So,
and then you talk the advantages.
yeah, so this model, after you choose your side, you start with the side that you wouldn't choose, whether it's advantages or disadvantages. Up to you.
Okay.
So the prompt says
So the prompt,
to state our opinion. So do we have to say at the end that in my opinion, I believe so and I think?
Well, you don't need to if you use this language. You can if you want to, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you say a statement like this, which outweigh the disadvantages, that it's clear that that's your opinion.
What about in conclusion? Where is like our opinion after but?
Okay,
In the
so
conclusion.
it's in several places. First of all, our opinion is in 1, 2, 3, 4 different places. Here at the top, while this has a number of disadvantages, so we're acknowledging one side, there are clear benefits to this practice. That's our opinion. Here, there are obvious benefits connected with monitoring workers at home, which outweigh the disadvantages. This is your opinion. And then at the end, when these reasons are considered, the benefits of monitoring workers exceed the disadvantages. This is the third place where we've stated the opinion. And then at the very end, exactly as you said, Dina, but the benefits of improved productivity exceed the disadvantages. So we've given our opinion in 4 places. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So can you please show the prompt once again?
Yep.
Can we use in between, like, because this program or this kind of camera is not yet installed in all, can use it like if conditional?
Okay, what would you like to say? So what would you like to say?
Like if this camera installed, it would help people, it would second conditional?
If the surveillance technology, just talk about it in general. You don't need to talk about cameras. You don't need to specify the technology. That's not a requirement here. Just call it surveillance technology. To any technology that monitors how people are working. You don't need to talk about the specifics. I would suggest you not talk about the specifics.
Okay.
But how would you like to phrase what you want to say, Dina?
Yeah, like if this technology surveillance implemented in many companies, many workers would, or the work productivity would increase.
If this technology is implemented, or if this technology were implemented, that would be unreal.
Yeah.
Productivity would increase.
Would increase.
Yeah, you could put that as your final thought if you really want to. If this technology were implemented in more companies, they would also not suffer from decreased productivity when or if their workers are working from home. They wouldn't suffer if they implemented this technology. That's unreal conditional. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so people ask about the best way to practice on your own, again, because our time together is very limited. If this were a full-time course, which I believe it should be, and we had class every day, we do things a bit differently. But as it turns out, we're only doing this class part-time, so much of the training has to be something that you do of your own initiative. Outlines like this help, but an approach that does work quite well. Step 1, you take a Band 9 model like this, and you copy it out by hand. This is a fantastic example of content, of structure, of language that you should be using. Write it out by hand, but the mindset has to be correct. You can't treat it like a chore. You have to, as much as possible, try and enjoy what you're doing, because you're trying to absorb the writing style, the vocabulary, the grammar. Okay. I've also indicated here in italics a lot of examples of passive voice being used. There's a lot of passive voice in here. Okay, because we don't want to keep saying the employer implemented the technology. It's not necessary. So after tracking technology was implemented, when these reasons are considered, instead of saying when you consider these reasons. This is more appropriate because it's too obvious who you're talking about or who you're talking to. Enjoy the process, write it out by hand. It shouldn't take you more than 10-15 minutes to write this out. Do that once. Some people do it 2 times, some people do it 3 times. The more, the better. You're going to notice different things every time you write this. Second step, you would make an outline based on this kind of essay. Right? It could be something with a little bit of detail, like the outline that we came up with earlier today, or it could be something with a lot of detail, like this one. Strip away the grammar and just leave the point form ideas only. Then write your own version of this based only on your point form notes. Compare it to the original. You can do that on your own. Because the structure is the same, the content's the same, you're just comparing the expression of ideas. And in the final step, put everything away, do your writing, post it in the forum for me to check. I give you feedback, I give you follow-up exercises as they come up, as they're relevant, and then you revise based on that. So by that point, you've done this at least 4 times. Your first modeling of this, the outline version, or the version rather based on the outline, what you post in the forum, and the revision. And if you rewrote it several times, instead of 4 times, that's going to be 5-6 times. Okay. Quantity has its own quality. Quantity has its own quality. You have to do a lot of writing to get good at it. It takes a long time because there are so many different patterns going on in terms of the language, in terms of the structure. There's no quick and easy way to do this, right? So the process does work. Yes, it is time consuming, but it does absolutely work. All right, so the outline here is done for you for this one. Let's see what we can do just orally in terms of creating an oral version of this essay. Let me start with Nazish. Why don't you do the introduction for us? So in this introduction, in all these point form notes here, I've stripped away much of the grammar and I've just left the bare ideas. And our goal just for this exercise is we don't need to recreate word for word the original, but to create something that's grammatically correct. Okay. Go ahead, Nazish. You're just doing the intro.
All right. Actually, I didn't get it. So what I was supposed to do, should I read it or like in my words or?
Well, yes, this is the point form summary. This
Right.
ongoing debate, good idea to constantly monitor workers at home.
Oh, so I have to like complete it, right?
You have to turn this into like a fully developed sentence.
Okay, there's an ongoing debate, whether it's a good idea to monitor employees constantly.
Not too fast, because I'm going to try and type as you're speaking. Okay. Don't forget about. There's an ongoing debate about whether it's a good idea.
It is a good idea to monitor employees at home.
Good. Okay. Next one.
There are several disadvantages, but benefits are also several.
Several. Okay. There are, we can say, a number of disadvantages, but
several benefits are also there. Or okay. Benefits.
Remember, this is
benefits.
Remember, this is not an advantages and disadvantages essay. This is advantages, disadvantages, and opinion. So your opinion has to come through clearly.
Oh. But advantages outnumber the disadvantages.
Okay, we can do it that way. But the advantages outnumber the disadvantages. Good. Disadvantages, but the advantages outnumber the disadvantages. That's a bit repetitive. I would use this construction instead. While there are a number of disadvantages, and then instead of saying but, the advantages outnumber the disadvantages. I would use a synonym here instead of disadvantages. What would be an easy synonym here?
Benefits? No, sorry. Disadvantage.
Drawbacks.
Drawbacks. Is there another synonym?
Cons.
Cons is kind of
Downsides.
informal. Downsides. Don't say cons. It's a bit informal. Downsides. Okay. Okay. Allah. Body paragraph number 1.
The surveillance of employees working from home have several disadvantages.
Has or have?
Sorry.
How do you know it's has?
Surveillance.
Right. Surveillance is the subject, not employees. Good.
Okay. Reasons. Okay. The negative impacts, we can say, on employee privacy, which make the employees feel uncomfortable, knowing they are being watched all the time.
Employees feel uncomfortable knowing they are being watched all the time.
That makes the employees feel all the time.
So again, we can clean it up a bit later, which makes.
Yeah. Okay. Which makes the employees feel. Which makes employees feel the employer doesn't trust them.
Okay. So the negative impact on employee privacy, so this has to be a sentence. We don't have a predicate here.
No verb.
You can add one small verb in here somewhere. You can add one very small 2-letter verb in here to make this okay.
Is
Where does it go?
the negative impact is on employees' privacy.
There you go. Easy fix. Several disadvantages.
Or
okay,
the negative impact on employee is breaching their privacy.
You
Can
could
we say that?
You could if you wanted to. Yep. Trains of employees working from home has several disadvantages. I would say the main or the negative impact is, if we do it like this, is mainly on employee privacy.
We need here apostrophe, employees.
You can do employees and then it would be S apostrophe. There's 2 ways. S apostrophe or leave it alone as a noun phrase. Employee privacy is a noun phrase. Now, which doesn't work here? Because it's not employee privacy makes employees feel uncomfortable. We need a different kind of connection here. The negative impact. Sorry, go ahead.
Is that leading employees feel uncomfortable, maybe?
Oh, because that's the connection.
I see.
Because it makes employees feel uncomfortable, knowing they are being watched all the time, which makes employees feel the employer doesn't trust them. Okay.
Okay. We can say now in 2017, a study like conducted by Harvard Business School.
Conducted by Harvard Business School. Okay, you can put in 2017 earlier, you can put it here.
Yes, showed that large percentage of workers who are constantly monitored suffer from anxiety disorder and stressful. That
When I do a backwards arrow, so the arrow indicates the direction of causality. So if the arrow is pointing to the right, that's my short form for it causes that. But if the arrow is pointing to the left, that means it's due to that factor. Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay.
So who are constantly monitored suffer from anxiety disorders due to the stress. Which make high pressure environment on employees.
Yeah, you could do that too. Let's do a couple small fixes here. A study conducted by Harvard Business School in 2017 showed that
a large
percentage of workers who are constantly monitored suffer from anxiety disorders due to
the stressful.
Sure. In this case, the or both work. Due to a stressful high pressure environment. Then how do we integrate the stuff in the brackets here?
Someone is constantly looking over the
When?
Good.
Someone is
looking over
their shoulders.
Good.
What about here the verb? Because a study done in 2017. So can we say a larger percent of workers who were constantly?
Just a sec. A study conducted by Harvard showed that a large. Okay. Great question. So the study was conducted in the past. So the results can either be in the past, or the results can be stated in present simple if they're a general fact that's true all the time.
Okay.
Right, because if the results are no longer true, then why are we referring to this study, right? So even though, like, we have to give the year when the study was conducted because that's just a requirement. Because if you're referring to a study that was conducted 30 years ago, then it's probably not relevant anymore. So we give a recent year, and obviously if you're going back to school, then the research that you find, it's better if it's more recent. It's more relevant that way. So we give a recent year, but then the actual results of the study, it's common to just state them in present simple. Okay, we've got present simple, who are constantly monitored. This is passive voice. Suffer, present simple. When someone is constantly looking over their shoulder, present continuous. Okay, it's the general fact that we're describing. Okay, so we've got this long significant statement here to make that connection very clear between our ideas in this paragraph and the prompt.
Okay, we could say lastly the problems for
so notice here, I love these little symbols because it's very efficient when you're writing an outline. Okay, so when I have an arrow pointed to the right, for me, that means that's the direction of causality. This causes, this leads to. When I have the arrow pointed to the left, then the direction of causality is in this direction, and it generally stands for is due to, is a result of. Okay.
Can you repeat that, John?
Yep. So when the arrow is pointed to the right, this is the direction of cause and effect. So when it's pointed to the right, it means this causes problems for the company. If the arrow is pointed to the left, then this is the direction of cause and effect, and it stands for is due to or results from. Okay. Not results in, but results like with the consequences.
I see. Okay.
And this is actually, oh no, that was right. Allah, go ahead.
So we could say, lastly,
I wouldn't say lastly, because this is a direct consequence. This is an explanation. So it's not a further point. It's you're now making the connection. You could say therefore, or you could
Okay.
just say this results in, this causes.
This is causes problems for the company.
Good.
For the company. And
Yes.
due to resentment,
Resentment.
what does that mean? Resentment.
Does anyone know that word, resent? What does it mean to resent something?
Saying no to someone,
Like
saying no or against.
It means feeling bitter.
No.
Feelings of,
Not agree with.
it's a little bit more specific than that. It means feeling bitter. Like if you don't get invited to some kind of party, you feel resentment. You feel bitterness against the people who did not invite you. If your colleague gets a raise but you don't, you feel resentment against the company and against that colleague. Like it's,
you feel
I'd
bad,
say,
like you feel bad. Well, why they did this to you?
exactly, a little bit like jealousy, but I guess it's a little bit different, like justifiable jealousy because you were mistreated for no reason. It's a good word.
Resentment.
Like people will often say, I really resent the fact that, let's say one of your colleagues has less seniority than you, has less skill, and they get the promotion. Then people will say, I really resent the fact that Jim got promoted ahead of me. The idea is that he didn't deserve it, but he got it anyway. You deserved it, but you didn't get it.
Some feeling that something happened unfair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Okay, Allah.
So due to resentment against the employer, which results in higher employer turnover.
Employee turnover. Careful employee, employer. Okay.
This is ironic. This is ironic issue can reduce production. This is ironic.
You don't need to say issue. This is ironic. Why?
This is ironic because it can reduces productivity.
So with modals, we just say it can reduce, I can reduce, he can, it can. Oh, they're all the same.
Okay, it can reduce productivity.
Why?
Because?
Yeah, because of turnover.
Or just, sorry, because employee turnover.
Cost time and money to train new staff.
That's it.
Monitoring employees.
Remember, this is the last sentence in that body paragraph.
Okay, so we can say based on these reasons, monitoring employees working from home is harmful for both companies and workers.
That's it. And I use the equal sign to mean the verb to be. Present, past, future, perfect. Just use equals. Very nice. Let's go with Zuby.
Yes.
Go ahead. Let's do the next one. So this is this. Remember, this one is our opinion that we're agreeing with the benefits.
On the other hand, there is always benefit. There's always benefit which overweight the disadvantages.
I don't know about always. I would just say much simpler construction there.
There are obvious benefits which overweigh the disadvantages.
Good. There's no overweigh. There's outweigh.
Outweigh, sorry. Outweigh.
Okay. No sorry. On the other hand,
he didn't. The question didn't say that outweigh or not. So it's okay to.
But it's what is your opinion?
Okay.
Discuss the advantages and disadvantages and give your opinion. So the obvious conclusion of that is there are advantages, there are disadvantages. What do you think? So yes, there's a range of responses that you can give. You can say in some cases, the advantages exceed the disadvantages. In other cases, the disadvantages exceed the advantages. But you see how complicated that gets very quickly. Don't do it. Just pick one side only. Okay. This is the most efficient structure. Remember, this is not a university class. You're not writing this for a professor. You're not telling anyone what you really think in your heart. You're just writing an essay to demonstrate to the examiner that you understand essay structure. That's it. And that you can use proper English. That's it. We don't care about the content. The content is just doing this job, right? So we want to pick the most efficient structure for delivering our ideas. So even if I don't believe this, I still find that it's very easy to talk about these obvious benefits. Just put yourself in any manager's shoes or any company owner's shoes. It's clear to see that there are obvious benefits of monitoring your employees. Okay, go ahead, Zuby.
One of the main advantage is that to increase productivity.
Good. We're going to say what is increasing worker productivity?
Yes. A study conducted in a study published in the New York Times in 2020 revealed or stated that constant monitoring during work hour significantly improve the productivity and the quality of work.
Improves. I would say improves productivity and quality of work. Good. Let's see. In the New York Times.
For example, during COVID-19,
we're just missing one element in this. What's missing from our study? What's missing? It's the connection to the prompt. It's this idea that it's like constant tracking software that workers are working from home, right? You can make it a little bit more explicit, but overall it's fine. When employees are working from home.
Yeah, during work from home or working
When
from home.
employees are working from home.
Increasing productivity and quality of work. For example, in COVID-19 quarantine situation.
The COVID-19 quarantine situation.
Where workers are working from home. We can like give something like this or not?
Well, what IELTS is looking for is a specific example from your own knowledge or experience. What a lot of people do when they say, for example, they're not really giving an example, they're just giving a general explanation. That's not really what an example is. An example should be specific. Let me put it this way. I should be able to visualize your example. So you can say, for example, just refer to a company, right?
Okay. No, but I want to like give a little more description about the workers, like work from home, and then we'll add. Like,
okay, go ahead then.
For example, in COVID-19 quarantine situation, where almost everyone is working from home. Working from home, and the employers notice that the work productivity has lost because people or the workers were logging late.
I'm going to say has declined.
Yes, has declined.
Because workers are
logging late and not being very productive. So they implemented the tracking technology.
Okay. Employers, I'm going to say, have noticed. I'm going to say many employers.
Yeah.
Okay, let's make it a little bit more specific and now switch to, however, several companies or some companies, okay?
Okay. So some companies implemented tracking technology.
Companies, I'm going to say have implemented because it's still in effect.
Technology, which
I'm going to add, however, at the beginning. Sorry, some companies have implemented tracking technology.
Which dramatically increased productivity or immediately increased productivity.
Which immediately increased productivity. Why?
This is because employees knew that they were being monitored and they altered their behavior, or they altered their behavior accordingly.
Let's just see how this reads. However, some companies have implemented tracking technology, which immediately increased productivity because employees, okay, let's switch it back to past tense. they were being monitored and altered their behavior accordingly. Yeah, nice. Okay. Okay. Remember, this is our conclusion. So what's a typical word for beginning the conclusion?
Based on the reasons, or
We can say therefore. We've got based on above.
Yeah. Therefore, when people know that they are being watched, they show or they display their best behavior.
Yeah, and the expression is they are on their best behavior.
They are on the best behavior.
Like when you take your kids out and they're young kids, you often say to them, I need you to be on your best behavior. Okay. This was an extra idea that was added.
Okay. If the employees,
I'm going to put moreover because that's in the original, because it's an extra idea.
Employees behaving, if the employee is behaving, if employees
Are.
Employees are behaving as expected and work diligently, then nothing to fear from surveillance.
Okay, but we have to make it grammatically correct. Then.
There will be.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. They
have nothing to fear.
Good. Okay, final line.
So I cannot see the final line.
Okay.
Could you please? Yeah. The benefit management. In my point of view, the benefit of monitoring workers is to disadvantages.
We can say thus, or we can say for these reasons.
For these reasons, the benefit of monitoring worker exceeds disadvantages.
Benefits exceed, not benefits exceeds. The benefits of monitoring workers exceed the
disadvantages.
Good. Okay, and last but not least, Kelly, can you finish this one off?
Yeah. As a result on both sides of this issue?
Why don't you start with both sides?
Okay. Speaking on both sides?
You can just say both sides. Both sides have
their merits.
Mm-hmm.
Can we say both sides of this argument? It's argument or no?
Sure. Both sides of this issue have their merits. Both sides of this argument have their merits. Yep. Remember, we've got that nice contrasting sentence format. Start with while or although.
Okay. Although is true. Although.
We can say although it is true
that civilians feel some pressure.
Causes some pressure.
Some pressures.
On whom?
On workers.
So we started with although, we don't put but. If you start a sentence with although, though, even though, or while, this contrast is understood, so you don't put but later.
Okay. Although it is true that civilian causes some pressure on workers, V, benefit of improved productivity exceed disadvantages. The disadvantages.
Good. Done.
I've got a question in the first body paragraph. Let me see if I can see it. When you were saying like, let me see if I can see it. Yeah, in evidence study conducted by Harvard Business School in 2017 showed that a large percentage of workers, when you say who are constantly monitored, suffer from anxiety disorder. That was in 2017, right? As a passive voice or present voice?
Well, the study was conducted in the past.
So can we say workers who were constantly monitoring or
were constantly monitored suffered from anxiety disorders when
can we
someone
say who were?
Here's the problem that creates. Yes, you can. Grammatically, that's fine. But past simple means that something is not true anymore. Right? He was here earlier means he's not here now. I used to ski means I don't ski now. I had a Toyota means I don't have a Toyota anymore. Right? So are you saying that this conclusion, the results of the study, are no longer true? So the study results are still valid, and that's why they're reported in present simple. So the study itself, you have to say it was conducted in the past because that's 2017. So we need past simple here. Yeah. But the results of the study are a general fact. That's still true.
Okay, because I was confused about talking the past and then are. It's like, okay, still happening in the present. Okay.
It's still true. Yep.
Okay. It's quite confused sometimes.
We did some research last year which shows that because the research that you conduct is always going to be in the past when you're talking about it. Unless you're talking about ongoing research. If the study's finished, we finished the study yesterday. The conclusions are presumably valid today. Right? If you conducted a study and the conclusions are no longer valid, then the study kind of doesn't matter. Then you need to do a new one.
I see. Okay.
So just the results themselves, present simple. When the study was conducted, past simple.
Yeah.
In some cases, you will refer to the study results in past simple, but that's on a case-by-case basis if you feel that it's relevant. Not in this case, though.
Because it's still happening in the present.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you're not reporting results that are still true in the present, then why are you reporting them? Then they're not relevant anymore.
Okay.
Right. So it needs to be that way. All right. Any other questions?